March 3, 1943. Dawn over the Bismarck Sea. Admiral Masatomi Kimura stands on the bridge of his flagship watching 8 destroyers escort 8 transport ships through waters his navy has controlled for over a year. He's moving 6,900 soldiers to New Guinea. The formation is textbook. The spacing is perfect. Every officer on that bridge has done this dozens of times before. Within 15 minutes, every single one of those ships will be sinking or on fire. But the reason why will change naval warfare forever. The convoy moves in practiced formation. Destroyers ring the transports like protective wolves. Anti-aircraft crews scan the sky. They've been briefed on American tactics, high-altitude B-17s that drop bombs harmlessly into the sea, torpedo planes that come in low and slow, easy targets for concentrated fire. The Japanese doctrine has proven reliable. Experience has taught them confidence. One gunnery officer mutters to his crew that the Americans are clumsy, that they attack from predictable angles. Kimura nods in agreement. His men have seen this before. They know what to expect. What they don't know is that 600 miles to the south, in a tin-roofed hangar in Australia, an American major has just finished turning a bomber into something the Japanese have never seen before. His name is Pappy Gunn, and he's about to rewrite the rules. The problem facing American forces in the Pacific isn't courage, it's geometry. High-altitude bombing against moving ships doesn't work. Bombs fall for thousands of feet. Ships maneuver. The math is simple and brutal. By the time the bomb reaches the ocean, the target has moved. Missions fail. Convoys get through. Japanese soldiers land safely. American troops die on the beaches. Gunn has watched this happen too many times. His solution sounds insane the first time he explains it. If we can't hit them from above, we'll attack from the side, turn the bomber into a gun. He orders his mechanics to strip a B-25 Mitchell down to its frame. They tear out the bombardier seat, the Norden bomb sight, the gloss nose panels, everything that doesn't contribute to firepower. Then they start mounting machine guns. 2 Browning 50 calibers, then 4, then 6. By the time they're finished, 8 barrels protrude from the nose like fangs. Each gun fires 850 rounds per minute. 8 guns firing together unleash 6,800 rounds per minute. For comparison, most Japanese destroyers carry only 6 deck-mounted 25mm guns. A single modified B-25 can deliver more forward-facing firepower than an entire escort ship. The test flight comes at dawn. Gunn climbs into the cockpit wearing grease-stained coveralls. At 500 feet above the practice range, he presses the trigger. The nose erupts in light and thunder, 8 streams of fire converging into a single roar. The vibration shakes the entire airframe. Spent shells cascade from the sides, bouncing off the wings like brass rain. When he lands, Gunn is grinning. "She doesn't bomb anymore," he says. "She eats ships." Word spreads through the 5th Air Force. Pilots who see the demonstration can't believe what they've witnessed. One observer compares it to a destroyer turned sideways and given wings. Another says simply, "That's not a bomber, it's a buzzsaw." But firepower alone won't win battles. You still have to hit the target, and hitting a moving ship from a bomber requires getting close, dangerously close. 100 miles away, another officer is working on the other half of the equation. Major William Benn of the 43rd Bombardment Group has grown tired of watching high-altitude bombing runs miss every ship they aim at. His idea sounds even more foolish than Gunn's. What if we make the bomb skip? The concept is simple. At the right height and speed, a bomb can bounce across water like a flat stone thrown by a child. 1 or 2 skips, then it slams into the side of a ship at waterline level, where the armor is thinnest, where a single explosion can split a hull open. But the execution is terrifying. The aircraft has to fly straight and level at no more than 200 feet, sometimes lower. At that height, 1 burst of anti-aircraft fire can tear the bomber apart. The release timing has to be perfect. Half a second too early and the bomb skips over the target. Half a second too late and it ricochets back into the plane. Ben's crews practice on a wrecked cargo ship stranded on a reef near Port Moresby. Day after day, they fly so low their propellers blow white spray off the waves. The first attempts are disastrous. Bombs skip wildly, explode too soon, miss entirely. But gradually, the men learn the rhythm, the glide, the release, the lift of the nose just before the explosion. After weeks of practice, they can hit a stationary ship 9 times out of 10. In January 1943, General George Kenney watches a live demonstration. The B-25 comes in low over the water. At precisely 600 yards, the bomb drops, hits the surface, skips once, strikes the wreck. A moment later, the target explodes in a geyser of flame and seawater. Kenney stares for a long time, then turns to Ben and says, "That's how we're going to end Japan's shipping." The 5th Air Force begins combining Gunn's strafers with Ben's skip bombers. The plan is elegant and brutal. The strafers go in first, unleashing 8 50 caliber guns to silence anti-aircraft positions and kill exposed crews. Seconds later, the bombers follow, releasing their bombs so close the explosions lift ships out of the water. The Japanese defenses, designed to track high-altitude or torpedo attacks, will be useless. By late February, intelligence confirms what they've been waiting for. A Japanese convoy is moving toward Leh. 8 transports, 8 destroyers, Admiral Kimura commanding. To the Japanese, it's a routine resupply mission. To the Americans, it's the perfect test. At Eagle Farm and Port Moresby, armorers load belts of ammunition and check fuses. Pilots study maps, tracing attack routes with grease pencils. The air smells of gasoline and wet soil. Men sleep beside their planes, afraid to miss the call. In the early hours of March 3rd, Ben's crews climb aboard their B-25s. They strap in, tighten their harnesses, wait for the engines to roar. Someone shouts a prayer. One by one, the bombers lift into the darkness, their navigation lights blinking over the jungle canopy. Far to the north, Kimura's convoy has no idea what's coming. At precisely 10 a.m., lookouts aboard the flagship Shirayuki spot silver flashes high above the horizon. A formation of B-17s approaches at roughly 7,000 feet. Kimura lowers his binoculars and nods calmly. This is expected. For months, American high-altitude bombers have attacked with little success. Their bombs fall harmlessly into the sea. "Maintain course," Kimura orders. Air defense officers shout range and bearing coordinates. Every destroyer elevates its guns. Anti-aircraft gunners load ammunition, adjusting sights. Within minutes, the sky fills with black bursts of flak. But as the crews focus upward, no one sees what's coming in low. Barely 15 miles away, skimming just above the ocean, 12 B-25 Mitchells and 13 Australian Beaufighters are racing in at wave-top height. Their propellers churn up mist. Sunlight flashes off their aluminum fuselages. Each nose bristles with 8 machine guns. Major Edward Larner commands the first wave. His aircraft is named Ruthless. Through his windshield, he can already see columns of water rising from the B-17 bombs exploding far above. The Japanese gunners are doing exactly what he hoped. They're looking in the wrong direction. At 280 miles per hour, Ruthless roars toward the destroyer Shirayuki. From the bridge, sailors suddenly notice something glinting on the horizon. Then someone shouts, "Enemy aircraft, low!" The cry ripples across the deck. Gunners scramble to swing their weapons downward. But the planes are already too close. Larner presses the trigger. 8 50 caliber guns erupt at once. The entire nose explodes in flame and thunder. To the Japanese crew, it's as if a wall of light has appeared out of nowhere. The first stream of armor-piercing incendiary rounds strikes the Shirayuki's bridge at 2,900 feet per second. Windows shatter, metal plates buckle, men vanish in bursts of sparks and smoke. Within seconds, every gun crew exposed on deck is hit. One survivor later recalls it was like being trapped inside a machine shop as every wall caught fire. Larner holds his trigger for 8 full seconds, fires nearly 900 rounds, then releases 2 500-pound bombs fitted with delay fuses. The bombs skip once, twice, then strike the destroyer just below the waterline. The explosions blow Shirayuki's midsection apart.
Steam and smoke burst upward. The ship begins to list. Behind reef lists, 11 more B-25s come in, one after another, each selecting a new target. Lieutenant John Hennebrey, flying an aircraft nicknamed the Air, aims for the transport Kyokusei Maru. His 8 guns walk a line of fire from bow to stern, shredding the bridge and silencing every anti-aircraft position before his bombs hit. The ship's captain never has a chance to give orders. The helm is gone, his crew either dead or wounded. The bowfighter escorts follow close behind, flying even lower, some barely 20 feet above the surface. Their 20mm cannons and machine guns hammer the upper decks, cutting down gunners who still try to return fire. The air over the convoy turns into chaos. Ships weave in desperate maneuvers. The water boils with tracer fire. Explosions echo across the sea as bombs skip across the waves, striking hulls and detonating deep inside. The Taimei Maru takes a direct hit near the engine room. Flames pour from ventilation shafts. The Nojima Maru is struck by 2 bombs that rip her open like a tin can. On the destroyer Arashio, Commander Shunsaku Kudo tries to shield the transports by steering between them and the attackers. His courage only makes him a better target. 3 B-25s turn their fire on him simultaneously, unleashing a combined storm of 24 machine guns. The Arashio's bridge vanishes in an eruption of fire and debris. Its rudder jams hard to starboard. Moments later, the out-of-control destroyer collides with the transport Nojima Maru. Both ships lock together, burning furiously as ammunition and fuel ignite. For the Japanese sailors who survived the first wave, it's as if the laws of war have been rewritten in front of them. There are no warning sirens, no altitude calls, no evasive maneuvers that work. The attackers come too fast and too low to track. The sound of the B-25's guns, 8 barrels hammering in unison, is unlike anything they've ever heard. It's not the staccato chatter of normal machine guns. It's a continuous roar, a mechanical scream that shakes the air. Admiral Kimura stands on what's left of his flagship and stares at the destruction. In every direction, ships are burning. Columns of black smoke rise thousands of feet. The Kenbu Maru, his largest transport, has taken 2 hits and is sinking stern first. Men are jumping overboard, their uniforms on fire. The sea, once calm and blue, is now streaked with oil and flame. The entire attack lasts less than 15 minutes. When the last B-25s pull away, climbing low over the burning wreckage, 4 Japanese destroyers and all 8 transports are either sinking or aflame. Thousands of soldiers and sailors are struggling in the water. One Japanese officer, standing waist-deep in the sea beside his overturned lifeboat, watches a transport explode nearby, and whispers, "We never saw them coming." The Bismarck Sea falls into an eerie silence, broken only by the crackle of burning oil and the distant cries of drowning men. Kimura stares through the smoke at what had been his flagship. It had taken only 15 minutes to turn 8 transports and 8 destroyers into a floating graveyard. The flagship Shirayuki is gone. Only a patch of burning oil marks where she had been. The destroyer Arashio is dead in the water, locked against the Nojima Maru. Both vessels burn from bow to stern. Men leap into the sea to escape the heat, their uniforms catching fire as they hit the surface. The surviving destroyers try to organize rescue operations, but within minutes, another wave of B-25s returns to strafe the wreckage. The low-flying gunships sweep the decks clean with gunfire. Even men who have already jumped into the water find no mercy. The Americans, following orders to prevent reinforcement, strafe lifeboats and swimmers alike.
For the Japanese sailors, there is no direction to run. The air stinks of burning fuel and cordite. The sea boils where oil catches fire. One survivor describes the horror. The water itself was burning. The heat came from below and the sky was red above. There was nowhere left to look that wasn't on fire. In the transport Kyokusei Maru, hundreds of soldiers from the 51st Division are trapped below decks when the first bombs hit. As the ship sinks, they try to climb toward the hatches, only to find them jammed shut by twisted metal. Others jump from portholes into the burning sea. their rifles and helmets dragging them under. Lieutenant Takashi Miyata, one of the few officers to survive, later writes, "I heard men calling to each other, but the voices stopped one by one. A hand reached for me from the water, but when I grasped it, it came away at the wrist. I cannot forget the weight of that hand." By 10:30 a.m., less than half an hour after the first bombs fell, the Bismarck Sea is unrecognizable. Burning ships drift aimlessly, colliding with one another as flames devour their wooden decks. Explosions erupt at random as munitions and fuel tanks ignite. Overhead, the smoke rises in pillars so thick that American reconnaissance aircraft can see them from over 50 miles away. Kimura's surviving destroyers pull aboard anyone still alive. The decks are slick with blood and oil. Corpsmen work without morphine or bandages, tearing their own shirts into strips. The wounded are laid in rows on the steel decks. Some still clutch letters that survived the fire. Others whisper prayers to ancestors whose names they can barely remember. In the water, sharks have begun to gather. Survivors describe the sea erupting around them as fins slice through the oil. Screams cut short as men vanish beneath the waves. By nightfall, the convoy is gone. Of the 6,900 soldiers who left Rabaul, fewer than 1,200 will ever see land again. The rest, nearly 5,700 men, are dead or missing, many still trapped inside their ships, entombed in the cold darkness below. When Japanese submarines arrive after dark to search for survivors, they find a sea of floating corpses and wreckage. The smell of fuel and death hangs heavy in the air. The radio reports they send back to Rabaul are short and staggering. Convoy destroyed, total loss, survivors minimal. Admiral Kimura never recovers from what he sees that day. In his after-action report written weeks later, he cannot bring himself to describe the battle in tactical terms. Instead, he writes only one line: "The sea itself was our enemy." Until that moment, Japan's surface fleet had relied on speed, discipline, and firepower. Convoys were protected by layers of destroyers, their anti-aircraft guns forming what they called the umbrella of steel. It had worked for nearly 2 years. But the Bismarck Sea shattered that illusion. No umbrella could stop bombs that skipped like stones, or machine guns that cut through armor faster than human reflexes could respond. Within days, the Navy's operational planners convened an emergency meeting. Charts and maps covered the tables. Red circles mark the range of American aircraft from bases in Australia and New Guinea. The conclusion is immediate and devastating. Every major convoy route in the South Pacific now lies within reach of B-25 strafers and their escorting fighters. Moving supplies by day is suicide. The new order is clear. Surface resupply will henceforth take place only at night. Troop transports are abandoned. Smaller vessels, barges, and submarines will attempt to carry food, ammunition, and fuel in secret, slipping through the darkness. The Japanese call it Yakan Yuso, the night run. The Americans call it the Tokyo Express. But whatever the name, it's a desperate improvisation, and it can never replace the massive convoys that once carried entire divisions across the Pacific. The consequences spread far beyond the Bismarck Sea. Without steady resupply, Japanese garrisons on New Guinea and the Solomon Islands begin to wither. Soldiers who once fought with discipline and confidence now starve in the jungle. Malaria, hunger, and exhaustion claim more lives than enemy bullets. The defeat at the Bismarck Sea is not just the loss of ships, it's the death of logistics, the end of mobility. Between March 1943 and the end of 1944, Japan loses over 60% of its merchant fleet. Nearly 500 vessels sunk. Transports, tankers, freighters, destroyers. Many fall to the same combination that destroyed Kimura's convoy: low-level strafing attacks and skip bombing runs. Reports from survivors filter back. Commanders describe panic among their crews, an almost superstitious fear of American aircraft. Sailors begin referring to the B-25 as Hachime no Oni, the eight-eyed demon, for the 8 gun barrels that glare from its nose. Others call it the flying saw, claiming the sound of its guns can slice through the air itself. At the Naval Staff College in Tokyo, analysts struggle to understand what went wrong. One report concludes bluntly, "Our doctrine assumes the enemy will attack as we would. He does not." For centuries, Japan's military philosophy had valued discipline, hierarchy, and repetition, virtues that served well in battles of precision and control. The Americans, by contrast, had embraced improvisation. They changed tactics overnight, turned bombers into gunships, mechanics into engineers, experiments into victories. It was, Yamamoto admits privately, the purest expression of industrial warfare, the ability to adapt faster than the enemy could respond. For the Americans, the victory confirms that the future of naval war no longer belongs to battleships or torpedoes. It belongs to machines like the B-25, fast, flexible, and deadly, and to the men who dared to reimagine how they were used. In the months that follow, similar attacks become routine. Japanese convoys attempting to run supplies are torn apart by Allied aircraft. Reports from surviving crews tell the same story again and again. Sudden appearance, blinding flashes, unending gunfire, ships exploding within seconds. By late 1943, Yamamoto's fleet has been forced into a defensive crouch. Large-scale surface movements cease almost entirely. The Imperial Navy, once master of the Pacific, has become a fleet of ghosts, hiding by day, moving only at night. Yamamoto's private diaries, recovered after the war, contain a line written shortly after the disaster. "It is not courage we lack, it is time. The enemy learns faster than we can think." After the Bismarck Sea, the idea spreads. North American aviation begins producing factory-built versions of Gunn's modifications. Later variants of the B-25 carry up to 18 forward-firing 50-caliber machine guns, a flying arsenal. The 345th Bombardment Group, the Air Apaches, receives their new strafers. They paint shark mouths across the noses and called them flying battleships. By late 1943, the B-25 strafer has redefined Allied air tactics. Squadrons develop new methods for attacking ships, airfields, even coastal defenses. Dawn raids over Rabaul and Wewak see entire harbors vanish in minutes. And yet, among those who fly them, there is little celebration. The pilots and gunners who return carry the weight of what they've seen. Ships exploding, men leaping into fire, the sea turning red. Major Edward Larner, who led the first wave over the Bismarck Sea, later admits, "We didn't cheer when we landed. We just sat there. It felt like we'd seen too much." In his later years, he visits museums where B-25s hang silent in perfect restoration, their polished aluminum skins gleaming under lights. "They don't make a sound anymore," he says, "but I still hear it." For Japan, the legacy is equally haunting. The defeat at the Bismarck Sea becomes a lesson written into every naval cadet's education. Underestimate innovation, tradition becomes a liability. In the post-war years, military engineers across the world study the concept Pappy Gunn pioneered, an aircraft transformed into a gun platform capable of concentrating overwhelming fire on a single target. The idea resurfaces 2 decades later in the jungles of Vietnam. The AC-47 Spooky Gunship, a transport plane armed with side-firing miniguns. Its successor, the AC-130 Spectre, carries even greater firepower, all echoing the same innovation born at Eagle Farm. And further still, the lineage of the strafer can be seen in the A-10 Thunderbolt II, the Warthog. Like its ancestor, it's ugly, durable, and devastating. Its GAU-8 Avenger cannon fires 3,900 rounds per minute, the modern equivalent of the B-25's 8 guns. The same principle endures, an aircraft designed not just to deliver weapons, but to become one. The wrecks of Shirayuki, Nojimamaru, and Kyokuseimaru still lie scattered across the seabed, twisted and silent.
Inside some of them, the remains of soldiers still rest, their names long forgotten. In 1969, divers from Papua New Guinea discover one of the wrecks, a transport split cleanly in half, its steel hull pierced in dozens of places by what look like saw cuts. Closer examination reveals hundreds of neat circular holes, each one the exact diameter of a .50 caliber bullet. Even after decades underwater, the evidence of what happened remains. Today, the sea over those wrecks is calm again. Schools of fish drift through rusted corridors where soldiers once stood. Coral grows over the twisted steel. Above, sunlight filters through the water in golden shafts, touching the guns, the railings, the bones of ships long gone. The surface of the Bismarck Sea is smooth, but beneath it lie the traces of innovation and tragedy intertwined. Major Pappy Gunn never lives to see the full impact of his creation. He dies in 1957 in a plane crash near the Philippines. On his desk at home, they find a note written in his hand. "We built them fast because men were dying faster." For him and for so many others, the line between necessity and genius had always been thin. Standing today on the shores of Papua New Guinea, one can still look out over the Bismarck Sea and imagine that morning in 1943, the calm, the smoke, the thunder, and the silence that followed. Somewhere below, among the coral and sand, lie the remains of ships and men who witnessed the moment when war itself changed form. The 8 gun barrels that once jutted from the noses of American bombers now rest in museums and memorials, their metal dulled by time, but they remain symbols of a truth that transcends nations and victories. In war, the tools that define progress often carry the weight of what they destroy. And as the waves roll gently over the graves of March 3, 1943, the sea keeps its secret, a quiet monument to ingenuity, to devastation, and to the fragile boundary between the two.